You're listening to the Phillies Nation podcast with Daubert and Jonny Heller on PhilliesNation.com.
What's going on, everybody? You're listening to another episode of the Phillies Nation podcast. I'm your host, Jonny Heller, coming at you. The winter meetings right now, it's been pretty, I want to say anticlimactic, but it doesn't even feel like there was a lot of buzz leading into them. It's been a really weird offseason, but we'll get into that a little bit more. Some Phillies things to talk about. Obviously, Dick Allen passed a couple days ago. Really sad. And then some other baseball stuff to touch on. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ty Daubert. Ty.
Yeah, like you said, we got that sad news on Monday that Dick Allen had passed, one of the best Phillies of all time, one of the most important Philadelphia sports players of all time. I think that's probably the most important thing we'll be talking about in this episode, and so I think we should just get right into it with Dick Allen. So
yeah, you mentioned it. Like he's one of the most important figures in Philadelphia sports history. Obviously, as a African American athlete in Philadelphia in the 50s or I should say the 60s, he was not treated well, and him not being in the Hall of Fame now, him like the way he is looked back at now, it's part of because of all the stuff he had to deal with as a player. And you had a statement from one of his teammates that you wanted to read, and it's from, what is it from? You can talk about it.
So Mike Schmidt at Dick Allen's number retirement ceremony, which happened just this past summer, he did get to see that. He finally got to see his number retired by the Phillies. It was long overdue, but they did give him that honor. And Mike Schmidt was there, and he gave a really good quote that I thought I should read. He said, "Dick was a sensitive black man who refused to be treated as a second-class citizen. He played in front of home fans that were products of that racist era, racist teammates, and different rules for whites and blacks. Fans threw stuff at him, and thus Dick wore a batting helmet throughout the whole game. They yelled degrading racial slurs. They dumped trash in his front yard at his home. In general, he was tormented, and it came from all directions, and Dick rebelled." I thought that was really nice from Mike Schmidt then, and it was something I thought of right away, and I made sure to put it in the story that I wrote for Phillies Nation after Allen's passing. I put a portion of that quote in there, and I think it summarizes nicely all about Allen's career. Not only was he a great player, he was a really impactful player, and he was great despite all the things that he faced. And he was a real pioneer, being one of the first black stars in Philadelphia, and he kind of paved the path for a lot of players, and he was obviously an all-time great. Should be in the Hall of Fame, like you mentioned. So, yeah, R.I.P. to Dick Allen.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you summed it up pretty well. Obviously we talk about Jackie Robinson as like a lot, and obviously he was the pioneer for all of baseball and really all of American sports. But there are other guys who maybe we don't talk about enough. I don't think we talk enough about what Dick Allen did, what he had to go through, and what his impact on, like you said, paving the way for future black athletes in Philadelphia and throughout sports. So, like you said, R.I.P. to Dick Allen, and I think he's going to make the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's just a shame that he won't be around to see it. It's obviously long overdue, and it's a product of pretty unfair media coverage from back then. And who are the people voting for the Hall of Fame? Right? I mean, you can put two and two together there and see that it's an injustice that he hasn't been inducted already. Like, he was incredible from right when he stepped on the field. His first full season in 1964, outside of Mike Trout, it's one of the best rookie seasons of all time. And he was that good. He battled injuries throughout his career, but whenever he was on the field, he was a legitimate power threat. There's stories of him hitting 500-foot home runs at Connie Mack Stadium, and obviously we weren't around to see that, but hearing the stories of him, he was obviously a great player, and it's a long overdue honor.
Yeah, definitely. So moving into some other stuff that happened this weekend. So it was kind of like a really weird, course of events that happened on Sunday. So first, there was a story from Buster Olney that said that the Phillies were, I think, like listening to offers for Zack Wheeler. So obviously, everyone knows the Phillies have been, um, you know, claiming that they have to cut costs and all of that. They've already laid off 17% of their staff. And Gene Segura has been mentioned in trade talks. I don't think anyone was really shocked by that. I think it was pretty surprising to see that on Sunday morning. So before we move into everything else that happened after, what was your initial reaction to seeing that? Because it does seem like even everything that was based on everything that was said after, like the Phillies were listening to offers for Wheeler, and like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, hot take alert. It's generally not a good idea to trade one of your better pitchers when you are probably going to need them again next year if you want to contend. Like if the team is set on contending, you have to build around players like Zack Wheeler instead of trading them. It's seems very obvious. I know that is it might be a hot take like I said, but yeah, it's just not a good idea. And it would if it were to have happened, it would obviously be to cut costs instead of trying to really add to the team and get ready to compete in 2021. But yeah, I that's kind of all I have. And then
I mean,
the things that happened after were a lot.
Here's the thing.
More
Here's
wild.
the thing too about like trading Zack Wheeler. It's very true even on a level for someone like Gene Segura, but it's even truer for a guy like Wheeler. Like when guys are getting paid a lot of money, generally, even if they're really good, you're not gonna get a good return for them. You know, what do the Yankees get, or what do the Marlins get back for Giancarlo Stanton? They didn't get much of anything of significance, right? He's really good. I know he's battled injuries and all that, but he's a monster. If the Phillies traded Zack Wheeler, they're not like bringing back a haul. They're probably getting a couple mid-tier prospects and still paying a little bit of the money on that contract.
Yeah, but the prospects isn't what a trade like that is about.
I know, but it's like I think people think of it as, oh, it's this isn't really like the Phillies thinking. This is just, I think sometimes fans will see, oh, they're trading this guy. Maybe it's time to just tear it down and rebuild. Let's see what we can get for this guy. Let's see what we can get for that guy. Like, no. At this point, like, you're invested in these players. It's time to try to win.
Do you remember the Cole Hamels trade? Like, sometimes when you trade a player for a haul of prospects, they don't pan out. And if you are set to try to contend, it's better to just have the player.
Right, and here's the thing. Zack Wheeler was a
same
free
thing
agent.
with Cliff Lee. I tweeted about that.
Right. Zack Wheeler was a free agent last year, right? Pre-pandemic, the Phillies offered him probably the second highest amount of money that he got offered. I know the White Sox gave him a higher offer. He already pitched for a year, so that probably the most valuable year of the contract is gone. So, like, wouldn't you think that the teams that didn't pay him then wouldn't be like? I just think it's crazy when people say, let's see what we can get for him. And I know, like, it's
to be fair to that, I agree with you. But if he didn't sign so early last offseason, if he waited to see what Steven Strasburg got, like his contract looks like an absolute bargain compared to like Steven Strasburg or a pitcher like that.
That's true. That is true. However, the Phillies aren't the only team crying poor right now, so I do think it would be, it would not be an exciting trade. It's not like when you trade a guy and you're scrolling through Twitter trying to find the return. What do we get?
Yeah, but also at the same time, this conversation is all for naught because the Phillies would not trade Zack Wheeler for Babe Ruth, Mike Schmidt,
Ted Williams.
Like they wouldn't do it. That's what John Middleton said. He did Andy McPhail and John Middleton both gave statements to Jim Salisbury of NBC Sports Philadelphia saying that it was untrue the reports were untrue, that they were not trying to trade Zack Wheeler. And then I believe it was to Buster Olney that Middleton gave
Yeah,
that Babe Ruth quote. But then I think Olney backed up his story saying that he did hear from other executives that they had some discussions about Zack Wheeler. So you can take that as you will. But just dissecting the quote about Babe Ruth, like prime Babe Ruth, prime Babe Ruth, I would probably trade Zack Wheeler for straight up.
It's just like, all right, here is all John Middleton had to come out and say. Obviously, any team is pretty much willing to listen to offers on any player. We are not inclined to trade Zack Wheeler right now. We are happy he's on the team. Like, all you have to say is we plan on keeping him moving forward. Like,
they wouldn't trade him for Babe Ruth.
Why come out and just say like I don't get that. Just, like, what are you talking about?
I made for a good quote. He is. I'll give him that. I will give that to John Middleton. He's delivered some quotes over the years.
He has delivered some quotes. Moving on. Yeah, I mean, like there are a couple things you can take away from this. First of all, the front office is either not on the same page as ownership, or Middleton just took the backlash from the fans, because it was Twitter on Sunday morning was pretty wild. People were coming at the Phillies,
Yeah, I mean, they're still upset. The Phillies Twitter account posted a meme. It was a picture of a gnome on Alec Boehm, like for the trend, like the Elf on the Shelf trend. And the fans just berated the Phillies Twitter account. Like people are not very happy right now, and I think it's understandable because there are expectations for a team when you sign Bryce Harper and you trade for JT Realmuto, and when it doesn't seem like you're doing all you can to compete and put the best team possible, your fans are not going to be happy. And are the social media interns responsible for that?
Is Graham fully
not
responsible for this?
Apparently. No, but it is understandable that the fans would be voicing their displeasure in the most accessible way that they feel they can, I guess, which is the Phillies' official social media pages.
Yeah, no, it's been interesting. But I mean, what do you think? How do you take that, like all of those events? Like, what does that mean for, what was Middleton telling Rice? What was Rice telling or Ned Rice, I should say? What was Ned Rice telling other GMs? Like, how did that all go down?
No, I mean, I think players all the time, like teams kick the tires on players, and maybe the Phillies. Even if Ned Rice didn't, or whoever didn't talk to John Middleton, and they were just like, hey, we could have financial restrictions. We could be looking to get rid of some salary. What would you give us for Zack Wheeler? I don't think it means much of anything.
Well, I mean, I do think it means that, like, what we can at least take away is that other teams are pretty responsive. Other teams are at least responsive to the idea that the Phillies are pretty publicly saying that they're in some sort of financial duress. Like, I know the only article said, the Phillies are signaling to other teams across the league that they're something along those lines, but it's not something that just like subtly like signaling to other teams. It's pretty clear that they're trying to get that to the public too, based on
it does. That's a good point. That at least with that only article, it feels like other teams' executives feel like the Phillies could be ready to unload a lot of salary, and they're ready to not try to spend money and things like that. So it's a good point, which obviously if you've listened to this podcast in the last 2 months, you'd know our stance on this, that the Phillies will need to spend money if they want to
compete. They want to win.
If they want to compete, they have to spend money, but it does not exactly seem like they're going to do that.
Yeah. I don't have much to add to that. I think that can lead into our next thing, though. So within the last week, I think this has all been reported by Jason Stark of The Athletic. First, Thad Levine, the general manager of the Minnesota Twins, who is considered to be it all happened in like within the span of 2 hours. It was last week that he was the Phillies were enamored by him, whatever, and then all of a sudden he was out of the running. Not he pulled himself out of the running, and then on Monday, I think maybe yesterday, I think it might have been Tuesday. Josh Burns, who's with the Los Angeles Dodgers, had at least one interview with the Phillies. Seemed to be a pretty high out there candidate. Also withdrew his name from consideration. Well, like, do you think guys are kind of seeing what this situation is and bowing out? Do you think they don't want to uproot in the middle of a pandemic? Like, do you have any takeaway here? Because I mean, we've talked
I
about
think
a
it
lot.
could
Like,
be.
the Phillies.
No, I think it could be a
Go ahead.
combination of things. I think it could be a combination of things. What maybe like it's obviously tough to deal with a team that is not exactly young and it needs to be built around, but you have a lot of limitations seemingly
Right.
on
Well,
how you'd be able to do that. So that's tough to build around right now. And if a high-ranking official goes in for a president of baseball operations interview and they feel like they don't have enough to work with, maybe they turn it down. Maybe they also are just happy with where they are.
right.
They come from good teams for the most part. The people that we've seen, the Twins, the Dodgers, good organizations that have won recently. Maybe they're just happy with where they are. It's tough to tell now, especially because I feel like if there were winter meetings, in-person winter meetings, we'd have a better feel for these things. But it's a little bit tough to tell. But it could be a whole combination of things, like I said.
Yeah, and I mean, I think just thinking now, like looking at the situations in which, someone would want to enter a new job as a GM or president of baseball operations versus where they wouldn't. I think a situation where a team is kind of like when Matt Klentak came to the Phillies, a team is entering like very clearly entering a rebuild, or on the other hand, a team coming out of a rebuild, like maybe the Marlins, you could take as an example of that. The Phillies it's not like the Phillies have much of a direction. So it's, if you're taking the job as the GM of the Phillies and you're given financial limitations, but also still, the team is trying to win, it's not like you're rebuilding. It's hard to, not that, like you said, it's not, that might not be why like Levine and Burns aren't taking the job, but I think it's something to keep in mind. It doesn't seem like the most appealing job in the world because, what do you do if you come on board and you can't spend money, and it's obviously not a team that's about to enter a rebuild.
Yeah, I think if there were no huge financial limitations and restrictions being placed on the front office, the Phillies job would probably be maybe the most attractive in baseball at this point. Like the people talked about the Mets one, and I've seen this point made on Twitter. You're working under Sandy Alderson. Like it isn't exactly your show to run. And the Phillies, it seems like if they were to hire a president of baseball operations, then Andy McPhail would kind of step out of the way a little bit and let that person handle all the big decisions. So I think if the Phillies were in a position right now where ownership was like, hey, here's your core and here are a lot of financial resources to work with, I think they could probably get somebody there pretty easily, but there's a lot of uncertainty with this team right now, and that could be holding them back from getting a really good candidate.
Yeah, agreed. And it's been by multiple. I know Matt Gell of the Athletic had an article this morning. It was really good, but it talked about that like, and we've heard this from other writers too. Like they might just not hire anybody. That's still a possibility. They're more than 2 months removed from Clentak stepping down. Haven't made any major league signings. Haven't made any trades of any significance. It's the winter meetings. By this point last year, they had already signed Wheeler. Zack Wheeler had almost signed Gregorius. I think that was like the 12th. By this point, 2 years ago, I think they had probably already signed Andrew McCutcheon. Like, this is the time of year when stuff happens. Like, stuff happens now. And maybe it's a little different. Maybe a ton of guys are still going to be around a little bit later because other teams are taking it slow. But it's just been, if you thought the team didn't have a direction like in October, like, I mean, look at them now. How much more directionless could you be? I don't know.
I don't know, man. Rule 5 draft coming up though.
That's true.
Yeah. Who's even? I know the Phillies have made some waiver claims. They have the Rule 5 coming up. Like, who's making the final call on these?
Who is? And that's the thing. Like, if they're waiting to hire someone to make these make any moves, I don't think that's like I get that if you're gonna hire someone now, but I probably would have said the same thing a month ago. Like, I get that if you're going to hire someone now, but like if you're going to enter the winter meetings without someone, like, you need to just, roll with net rice, roll with what you have and hope for the best. Like I said, guys aren't getting signed as quickly a pace as usual around this time of year, but it's still happening.
Not that they have been signed quickly at all over the past few years.
That's true. This isn't just because of the pandemic. This has kind of been happening in general, but and it's also interesting to see that it's just been certain teams, signing players, trading for players, and then other teams like the Angels, the Royals, the Braves. Am I missing anyone?
I don't think so.
So I don't know. We'll see.
The Reds have gotten rid of a lot of players,
and the Mets signed what's his name, the reliever, May. So Mets seem to
Phillies prospect Trevor May.
People forget that. I do think the next time we talk, the Mets will have made some sort of signing. There's been a lot of buzz with James McCann, George Springer. So we'll see. Before we wrap up, I'm gonna give you a couple over-unders here, just for the sake of how we think the next couple months might go. All right, over under January 1st, the Phillies' first major league signing or trade. Do they make it before or after?
Before. I think. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's already like the middle of December.
If you told me, yeah, I know. If you told me like December 10th at the beginning of the off season, I would have said before. Like, all right. April, no, whenever the season starts, March, whatever, if a new president of baseball operations or a new general manager is hired. Before or after?
After. I don't think they're going to at this point.
Wow. Do you think if they would go through the whole season and then like resume the search after the year, or do you think they'd kind of keep searching for someone even mid-season?
I think it would probably go in the next off season.
Oof. All right, last over under, just for the sake of baseball in general, because as I said, the off season has been moving slowly. So over under, we'll go March 1st for, I'll call them the big three free agents we signed. So that's Trevor Bauer, JT Realmuto, and George Springer. March 1st.
Oh, it'll be after.
You think so?
Also, you could have called this before or after instead of
I know, instead of over under.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be after. I mean, Jake Arrieta didn't even get signed until like almost opening day.
Yeah, I mean, Bryce Harper, wasn't he February 28th?
Yeah, and it became official on March 1st.
Right. So yeah,
I think it could be after.
I think I agree with all of that. It is crazy to think that they aren't gonna sign anyone in a leadership position.
It's also kind of wild to think that for the first time in like a while, they're probably not going to sign any big free agents. And now they could very well end up with Realmuto, but the reality over the past few years has been like pretty big off seasons for the Phillies, which is cool to watch.
Yeah.
Like that's fun to watch, fun to cover, and it's easy to get excited about if you're a Phillies fan. And this is just completely the opposite.
Right. Yeah, it's nothing seems to be happening. It's been right like you said, it was 3 straight off seasons of a lot happening. Like multiple big signings each year pretty much. But yeah, I mean, we are going to wrap things up there. We'll talk to you guys next week. Maybe something will have happened. Maybe.
Yeah, listen, everyone. If you thought the baseball offseason was too slow in the past, just buckle up. Buckle in. Here we go. Yeah. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah.
You can listen to the Phillies Nation podcast with Ty Daubert and Jonny Heller every Wednesday on PhilliesNation.com and all streaming services.